I really enjoyed our
Absolutely.
Stargate conversation. I kind of owed you a conversation about who you are as an artist, as a creator. So
It was good to talk to you last time, and I've been watching your progress, and I have to say, I mean, I envy you. I mean, you've done so great steps with your podcast and your episode with Daniel Abraham, of all people.
do you like that show, The Expanse?
Oh, I love it.
Do you?
I don't know what's going to happen to it, though. I'm looking forward to see what Daniel and Ty are going to do with it, if they're going to be the ones doing anything with it at all.
What about the book series? And have you ever read any of the series that the television show is based off of?
I, I didn't. I
No.
heard about books from the show. It's one of those cases, which
Yeah.
is sadly,
Same.
happens more and more often. I was planning to, but I kind of promised myself that I would finish my own book first, the one that I was working on, before I would start taking another series, just to avoid any kind of um,
Cross contamination.
yeah, exactly. You can call it that. I'll call it inspiration when it when
Yeah.
it, when it's from Daniel and Ty from towards me. Then I would call it inspiration. But yeah, contamination is as good a word as any.
That's interesting. So you stay away from all science fiction when you're writing.
Well, I can't bear to stay away from everything. I mean, I have to get my dose one way or another. But I do try to to compartmentalize. So
It's
I
hard,
don't
man.
know.
For me personally, I have a hard time reading fiction, like any fiction, when I'm writing or editing, for that matter. Which I'm always writing or editing. Just
Right.
can't get into it. I'm judging the author. I'm feeling inadequate. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn it, I can't write this good. I can't read
Yeah,
this
exactly. I feel just the same, and I try
well.
to steal as much as I can. And I try to. I often find myself stopping in the middle of the page or in the middle of a paragraph and think, how could he think of that? Why can't I think of things like that?
Am I thinking of things like that and I'm just not aware of it? Because really, I
Yeah,
mean, you're an artist, you create things. I mean, you accidentally your way into a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, as a programmer, you probably do that all the time too. Just,
it
oops, what did
happens.
I do? Oh, it works.
Yeah, I mean, creativity, it plays a huge role in programming, maybe at least as much as it does in book writing. And honestly, now that last time we spoke, I hadn't finished the book I was writing. It's finished now. It's in the editing process, and I sort of miss the creative aspect of it. Now it's all technical, and proofreading and finding mistakes and finding continuity errors and everything. And it's not as creative as it was, so I sort of miss that.
Yeah, I totally get you, man. It's like you have these longer works and you really have to get yourself into it. You can't,
Right.
I mean, you could write maybe a short story, maybe, if you
Uh,
schedule yourself, but I mean, it's really hard, right? I mean, it's hard to pull back from that kind of stuff and write something completely different.
True, it is. I mean, it kind of stays with you for a while.
So you finished the novel that you just finished that you're in the editorial process on. Is that part of the series that you already have
It's
working?
Yeah, it's a sequel to my previous book, so you might call it a series of two at the moment.
A
I
duology, right? Is that what they're called?
Yes, no,
Are
I
you
just
gonna do a trilogy?
I just for the sake of the word, I don't know. It depends on the feedback I get from this one. Well, from these two, I've
Gotcha.
gotten pretty good feedback from the first one, which is why I've started on the sequel, and I guess I'm just going to wait and see what people think about the sequel and see then.
I think we talked a little bit about that before, actually. The idea of not burning yourself too brightly on one thing when potentially you could be working on something else, right? Right? Don't devote too much energy on this thing if it's not going to be working.
Exactly. It's a virtue to be able to give up at some point. There's no. It's not a virtue to die holding the sword. You only have fantasy stories. Heroes die holding the sword, but in real life, it's much more important to know when to stop into something else, or backtrack and fix it or whatever it needs.
Well, that's really interesting because it sounds like you're talking about writing in general. Like if this series doesn't work, you're not going to write anymore, or are you
Yeah.
just going to, are you really?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I write is for the reader. If the reader doesn't like it, then that's it.
What's really fascinating, if you look at some of the greats like H.G. Wells or like Jules
Yeah,
Verne,
he didn't
they're
do
not
that.
writing all great stuff. They write they pop 4 or 5 of their best novels. You know
Yeah,
them, off the top of your head. You don't know any of the other works. I mean, they wrote like 50, 60 novels.
true.
Guaranteed, you won't be able to name any more than 3 or 4. So, I mean, your first 7 novels might suck, and then there's this woman on Twitter that just popped a contract for 6 figures off her eighth novel or something. I
Uh,
mean, it's like, when do you quit exactly? When you die? I mean,
yeah,
this is one of those things where you have to like dedicate yourself to the absolute finish line, which is, I guess, somebody burying you or finding you rotting with the keyboard underneath your fingertips.
true. And it happens. I mean, it's happening, but it's so much. It's a matter of luck as much as anything else.
Is it? Do you think it is at this point? You think it's all about luck?
Well, look at it this way. There are nearly zero publishers in the world on the face of the planet right now, today, in 2018, that accept manuscripts. I mean, unsolicited
Well,
manuscripts.
that's
There's
not
nobody to send it
100%
to.
true. I could send you a list right now, actually. Let me get you I will show you a list of publications through the Science Fiction Fantasy Guild. You click through them, and there are some of them that will allow you to send God, what's the word?
Unrequested,
Unsolicited manuscripts.
unsolicited manuscript. Well, that's news for me. All the ones I've tried so far were against the idea. I was thinking because, well, you're an American, but in my last book, in my last 2 books, the Americans aren't exactly the positive heroes. There's no John McClane saving the universe.
We don't do ourselves any. We don't do ourselves any. What's it called? Favors, man. We're really setting ourselves up for being villains now.
I'm not going to comment on that, but
You can. I mean, absolutely, because that is part of your creativity, right? I mean, I was just reading an article today about it. I mean, if you're going to write, a story about resistance or revolution, or even dystopia, right? Because a lot of people are writing dystopian fiction
yes,
nowadays. You have to talk about politics, and when you talk about politics, you have to talk about the bad stuff. And I can't lie. We've got some horrible stuff happening around the world, not just in my country, but damn, the Philippines. That dude, right?
yeah, or so many
North
other places.
Korea, a lot of
Yeah.
other places. I mean, there's a lot of horrible places. Turkey, and there's a lot of horrible places on this planet doing a lot of bad things to people. And do you write dystopian fiction? What is your fiction like when you write?
I, I would call it a little more classical, although it's time travel without involving any time travel. So
Time
there's
travel. Wow, you're brave, right?
yeah, well,
Yeah,
there's nobody traveling through time.
yeah. No,
There's
that's
no
true.
time travel machine or something like that.
I love the idea of time travel. It's absolutely perfect. So your novels are all taking place in an alternate reality, or how does your time travel work?
Well, it's and without giving up too much of it. Well, I have people from 900 years apart. So there's a guy from the second century, and there's a girl from year 1111, so the 12th century, and then there's a modern day Englishman, and they all meet aboard a mysterious starship. And there's no time travel involved at all.
But oh,
But
interesting. So
yeah,
you are
yeah.
playing with physics in a way, aren't you? Like the idea
Well,
of light travel or the speed of light or something along those lines?
there's some relativity
Relativity.
involved, but not all that much. It's basically just somebody with a lot of patience. Anyway, I wouldn't want to give up all the catches. What I was going to say is because the Americans being sort of the not necessarily the baddies, but not part of the good team in my universe, I was surprised to find that it has quite a good grip in Australia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I was thinking about trying to sell it there, trying to find some publisher there. And, you never know.
I mean, how
Although,
does that work? Because you're international, aren't you? I mean, you could sell to.
well,
Would
why
you
not?
want to be in? Well, why not? Why could you get into the science fiction fantasy guild if you wanted to as a Romanian or as a?
This is sweet. I doubt it, but I'm not sure. I
You're
haven't
not
even
sure.
tried. I don't.
But
Honestly,
I
I don't see
think,
the
am I
advantage
right? You guys protect your artists though in Sweden and
in
Norway.
Europe, the European Union. Yeah,
Yeah, you guys, if you publish, the government, now this might be complete crap, will buy like 4,000 copies of your novel or something along those lines.
I haven't. I have. Honestly, that hasn't happened to me.
But I think you have to be like full on with a publisher or something along those lines, right? I don't think it counts for indies necessarily. You're full on indie published at this point.
And yeah, I'm self-publishing.
Self-publishing, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it applies to fiction.
You don't think it applies, like it's only nonfiction?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure. It's
Uh,
interesting though, right? I mean, it kind of fosters the creative spirit in Sweden, doesn't it?
well, yeah, and there are so many places where you can just go and find help. You know, find a coach or find. But the one thing they won't give you is the actual support to be published. So they won't help you find a publisher as such. That's still something you have to do for yourself. And because so few publishers accept manuscripts today, well, you say you have a list. I envy you. I would very much like to see that list.
Oh hell yeah! I will. Thank you for reminding me. I'll do it right now.
While we're
So
talking,
you can
but
take a look at it. Yeah, it's yeah, but like what you. I mean, the whole goal of the thing that I do every day is to try to find a home for the words, right? And the home that I want is in front of somebody's eyes.
right,
I mean,
yeah,
I could, along with like hundreds of thousands of other people, publish my novels and my stories on Amazon and go, here you go, world, take them. But I think to myself, I wonder, I want to go through somebody that's going to say no hundreds of times and then say yes that one time. That really
yeah,
just matters then. It's like
yeah,
fireworks. It's like the best feeling in the entire world when you get a yes and then there's a check that comes in the mail that somebody wrote out and said, boom, there you go. I want to pay you for your stuff.
yeah.
I don't
Sounds
know.
about.
I'm
Sounds about.
worried. Right. And then I wonder because I mean, it's frustrating when you indie publish because then you look at it, it's like, what the hell's happening? I'm with all these other people doing the exact same thing, selling to their moms and dads. And then you wonder how those other people kind of work it out. And I'm so curious because some people do. Some
Mm.
people bang it out. Some people are
Yeah, look
making
at Andy
millions of
Weir
dollars a year.
with The Martian.
Yeah, The Martian is a great example. He's a millionaire now because of that. And that was an indie publication.
Yeah.
Glenn Stewart is a guy that I just talked to recently. He does fantasy, epic fantasy, and he publishes, millions of novels a year, sells millions of dollars a year,
Yeah.
millions of dollars worth novels a year. I mean, I think he said like 100,000 a year or something like that. But I mean, he's making money, right? That's real money. It's all
Yeah, but
his.
for every author that makes money, there's, I suspect, at least 500 that are just lurking in the shadows.
500, man. I think that's generous, right? I think it's even higher than that.
Yeah,
I
small
don't know.
companies. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think I remember hearing something like thousands of novels are published every day on Amazon. Just
Well, yeah. I mean, I sometimes do a promotion for my novels and let them roam free, just to see how far up they'll, hike into the top. To the top of the novels, and they usually go pretty damn high. I think the highest I went was in the top 50. But
interesting. And we're
yeah,
talking like 27,000, right? I mean, not that huge number that you could be in Europe in the 50s there.
yeah. But then there's a subcategories. Science fiction
Yeah.
itself is a subcategory of Amazon, and within
And
that,
that's what I hear, right? Those subcategories are incredibly important. You have to play with those.
everybody says that. Yeah, everybody keeps saying that you have to play your cards right and choose the right tags.
So what do people say about your work? I just poured my coffee out in the drain. That's what that noise was, if you're wondering. If you even heard anything to begin with, it's like, wow, that was a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. That way, I drew attention to it. I might as well just go ahead and rinse the cup out because that was my intention anyway. Could have put you on mute, but hey, why not be a little rude? I'll delete this all out. Anyway, what did I ask you? Who are you again? What are we talking about?
Next to your computer. Where do
I'm
you have
sorry.
it?
Yes, I
What-
do not have that list. If I might.
That's okay. You can send it when I find it.
Distracted. Let's see. So, I mean, do you write short fiction at all?
I used to, not anymore.
Yeah.
I'm more attracted to novels, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I'm attracted to that longer work as well, but I really love brevity. It's just so incredibly hard to write a 50-word story, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
resonates and sticks with people.
Mm.
I read a 1,000-word story. I don't know where that list is. I will send it. I'm so distractible. I'm like in the middle of looking for it, and then you say something interesting, and I want to get up and start talking
No,
again.
that's fine. You can look
I'll send it to you after we get off. But yeah, you look through it and you see tons of opportunities. and not only just opportunities, but things that you can aim for, like Elder Press or Elder Scrolls Press or something like that, who writes kind of Lovecraftian fiction. They want you to write an 80,000 word novel and send it to them to look at, but you have to aim. You know what I mean? You have to be specific
Right.
to what they're
Yeah,
writing,
yeah.
what they want to put into their audience. You have to be willing to, move away from what you think your fiction's about and try to become more fluid.
Which
You know what I
happens
mean?
anyway when you're in talks with a publisher. You end up more or less doing
Doing the same thing, right? I mean, they have a
exactly.
vision for their year. You're working within the market too, right? I mean, you have to understand what the market's doing
Yeah.
way in advance, and that's impossible. I think it's impossible,
Well, it's very, very difficult.
right? I mean, you cannot plan on a J.K. Rowling. I mean, that stuff just kind of happens. You can't
No,
plan on a Martian. I mean, that stuff just kind of happens, and you have to
yeah.
put yourself in that situation, that place.
The same thing happened to the guy who created. Well, there's this new cartoon show, American cartoon show, um, which is on Netflix now. And this guy, who was just a YouTube content creator, was suddenly picked up by well, some Hollywood personalities, and now he's all over the showbiz, so to speak. It's called
Are you
Final Space.
are you talking about the BoJack Horseman guy? Or which show is this?
Final Space.
Oh, yeah. I watched the first few episodes of that. That's really good, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
It's really
considering,
good.
yeah, all things considered, it's really good. And they have some huge actors for voices. They have David Tennant and Ron
Oh,
Perlman.
I didn't even notice. What I noticed was the streamed down storytelling. I mean, basically the
Right.
episodes are taking place within a really nice arc, and the way that
It's a lot like The Expanse in that, from that.
what
It's
say
a lot like
what?
The Expanse. The Expanse also had, I think in the first season, it had this thing where the initial events would be coupled together across many episodes. In sort of
I
like,
watched the first half of the first season of The Expanse, and I really did thoroughly enjoy it. But I was bothered a little bit by the idea, and I get affected by this with television. It just comes off as very like a soap opera. You know what I mean? It has a
yeah.
very, oh God, please don't have a romance. Oh, don't hit him. Okay, don't. I guess I don't know. You seem like a very action-oriented dude. You fly helicopters. You're kind of worldly. You're Romanian, whatever, Swede. Now
Yeah.
you probably have been punched in the face, right? And you've probably been injured in your life. I hate it. I hate it in the movies when they just get up. Like it's nothing. Shit like that hurts. It breaks you. You're done for a few hours, if not days.
It doesn't matter because it's all make believe, and
I know. I don't want it to be make believe. I want it to I want it to be more of a mirror to real life. I don't want it to be that fakeness again anymore. You know what I mean? If there's violence, I want to see the reaction of the violence for a long time because it needs to heal.
well, there are shows like that too,
Yeah, like Breaking Bad, right?
like Breaking Bad, or the sequel, like Better Call Saul.
Yep, good show too.
It's really good. Yeah, it's falling in its tracks, if not even better sometimes. So I mean, if that's what you're after, you can find it. But then so many people are just after something that would just
Pass the time.
yeah, exactly. They have a word in Swedish which means just to decouple, but it applies to people. Just to
Oh yeah, I get it. You just want to.
turn off yourself for a
Yeah,
while.
I got you. You don't want to think too much. And I think that might be the problem with my fiction, is I tend to hit people really hard with my dumb messages and emotions or whatever. And you know what? If you could tell a joke, that's what people want. If you could tell an 80,000 word joke, that's what people really, really want at the end of the day. It's just a really,
But that's so hard to do.
yeah, that's the point, isn't it? I mean, if everybody could do it, Amazon would be filled with best-selling novels, but instead, it's a lot of.
I've seen a bunch of sci-fi novels which started off roaringly hilarious, and then just lost it after 20,000 words or so, and it just fell into routine and stopped being funny.
Well, you've written
So,
novels. Do you aim for the word count? I mean, when you're writing your stories, you're like, this has to be a novel, right? And it has to be meaty, so I have to read 80,000 words or whatever. Do you do that, or is it just this is the story that I'm writing?
I do that in terms of two things. First of all, I try to set myself a little target for the day. So if I'm going to write today, I want to write at least 2 or 3,000 words, for
Oh
instance.
wow, okay, that's cool. I try to write at least 1,000, but
Yeah, well, so it doesn't always work out, and
yeah,
it
it
can
doesn't
take.
work out. Yeah.
Yeah, but and the other thing is, as you say, in order to be a novel, it has to have like 80 or the last one has 105,000. So
You could have a 40,000 word novel. I mean, that's the less. Anything less than 40,000, it's novella. But I mean, 40,000 up. There you go.
it depends on who you ask. They say that in science fiction they're allowed to be shorter. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if that.
guess they do. They look at it genre specific, don't they? Like if you're writing fantasy, they want it big. They want it 80,000, 90,000,
Exactly,
110,000 words, something like that. And I guess
yeah.
that you want, I mean, in terms of being a reader, you do want something a little heftier, don't you? You want something that's going to last a few days.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends. Maybe you're just looking for something to pass the time when on a train trip or something, on a
Mhm.
short. Yeah, but sometimes, well, if it's fantasy, you want it to be immersive and you want it to capture you and hold you there for more than a couple of days. Um, I don't know if you read. There's a fantasy trilogy that also started as an independently published endeavor and then was picked up by a huge publisher and made into a big deal. And it's called The Lies of Locke Lamora.
No, I've not heard of that.
It's the author is an American game designer, a computer game designer, and well, it shows in the novel. His name is Scott Lynch. It shows in the novel. Much of it is like a Dungeons of Dragons kind of thing, and it's it enjoyed huge success after it was picked up by Bantam. It was well, people. Bantam is a huge Bantam Spectra is a huge publisher in the US. And he started off like just like you and me, just writing more or less for fun. And then it just clicked. It just happened. So it's possible.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think there's a lot of nuts and bolts that go into that part though between, right? I mean, you can't come from nothing and be something. I
No,
think
no.
every author has to have some kind of, you're swimming in murky waters, right? As an
Mm.
indie, you know this, you see this every single time you log on to your whatever your bookshelf on Amazon, you know that there's a mystery to it all. And
Yeah, there's an unexplained side of things. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that involves how do you get those eyeballs to be interested enough to come back over and over and over again, develop that relationship. And I
There's a
think
marketing aspect to it. Yeah.
I mean, if you could develop that relationship with publishers, I mean, they're the ultimate readers, right? If they're going to give you the thumbs up, then you're probably going to get other people to give you the thumbs up too. I don't know. I just got scared. I published my first novel on Amazon and I didn't know why people weren't buying it. You know what I mean? I don't know why people weren't saying, here, let's give this a shot.
Because they
And it
weren't.
probably just, I mean, it just wasn't good enough, right? I mean, ultimately, you have to look at it as I failed to entertain them enough past the preview, or even at the preview point, if they get to that far. Something was missing that prevented it from happening, whether I just got buried by the slush pile or something else. You know what I mean? So if you can publish novels through a publisher and they're saying yes, I mean, does that give you an idea
Well,
of where
yes,
you are?
not all publishers are born equal either. I published my first book through a publisher,
Okay.
and it was really disappointing. And
Why?
well, I had a what you might call a bad relationship with the editor.
Oh, it's
You
not good.
know, did everything they asked for, and at the end, I didn't even see one penny or 1 cent in your case of of the shares of the from selling the book. Even though I seen the numbers and I know there was some money there,
Oh, that
so
sucks.
I
And
don't know if we can even.
that's why this guild thing is actually, these are publishers that this guild says are cool.
Yeah,
they have been vetted basically.
right. Yeah.
I think I'm almost on the list. Okay, I found it. Okay, here it is. I'm gonna send it to you right now. Whew, man, I would like click and then I would scroll and I wouldn't pay attention to what I was doing. I'm gonna put it in Facebook for you. So here you go, and it's sent. That is a list of all the short story and novel publishing. There's anthologies in there, and I think some other good stuff too. And
Right.
yeah, some of them like Tor.com recently just opened their submissions for novellas for anything up to 30,000 words. I mean, you could have aimed a novella at them specifically, but a lot of these other novel places are saying open submissions for novels over 80,000 words or something like that. And the other thing is, I mean, if you want to go on that route, the unfortunate bit of news is that you cannot have had ever published it anywhere,
Yeah, I
pretty
heard
much
about
at
that.
all. It like put a damper on things, right? Because I'm writing fiction all over the place and publishing it on my website, going, "Oh, I'm so cool," and then I realized I can't ever publish that anywhere else. I'm like, oh, okay. What am
What
I
I'm
supposed to
wondering
do?
about is if I would have to be a member in this
Yeah,
exactly, and because it ends with of America, I'm guessing that I don't qualify.
I don't see why that would be the case, because these publishers don't give one bit of damn who you're with at this point in time. They care who they're with. You know what I mean? They get the clout of being on this list, which is pretty impressive. There are not that many of them on here. There's like 30 publishers at all, maybe, and they want to stay on that list. So they want good quality fiction and they want people to buy their stuff. And if you're writing good quality fiction, they'll publish you. And as soon as you publish, then you qualify to be in this guild if you want to be in this guild. But the idea is, I guess, that this list will provide you with reputable publishers. Maybe.
You know what, Brian? You should be an agent.
I should be an author. I'm not going to, you know what? I would be a horrible agent. Oh, can you imagine that? What does an agent do exactly?
Well,
But I guess that's a good point, though, right? I have to be an agent. I have to be my own agent. You have to be your own agent too, don't you?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I would happily go to somebody like you to intermediate all this stuff.
Yeah, but I'm not. There's gatekeepers. I'm outside of it too, looking at it, banging my fists on it as well, hoping slide some fiction in every once in a while. And
Well,
that's
that's
the thing, man. I mean, you look at it. This website has a list of estates too, of thousands and thousands of stories that people come to and buy the rights to. I mean, there's even a slush pile of like reputable fiction. It's never ending. I think what we're talking about is how do you get these people to be interested long enough, to get your 4 or 5 novels.
yeah. I don't know if I mentioned the last time. I used to have a friend who was working as an intern for a publisher, and her job was to read all the incoming manuscripts and to pick the ones that were so good that they deserved a written letter of rejection from one of the senior editors.
She would write the letter, or that would go up to the
Ah,
senior editor to write that letter.
yeah, one of the seniors would do that, but they would have to be really good in order to deserve a written letter of rejection. All
I
the other
mean,
ones were just.
I submitted a novella to that Tor.com thing, and I was number 330 something. And I submitted 5 days after it opened, and it didn't close until like 8 days later. I
Oh well.
mean, I can't even imagine how many novellas these people have. There's only 3 of them that I know
Oh
of. It's probably interns or whatever, but there's only 3 people reading thousands of novellas,
yeah.
and they're bad, man. There's a lot of bad ones out there. I know there are.
Yeah, that's the problem. 100 years ago, it was like at H. Wells times, well, probably more than 150 years. It was a lot easier to publish, and it was a lot harder to break the ice if you sucked,
Yeah,
because
because
nobody.
you were illiterate, right? I mean, if you sucked, you probably couldn't read or write anyway.
Exactly. But
Black lung
good.
doesn't.
As long as you could do that, you had a lot of open doors for you.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you had a good education, which there weren't many people in H.G. Wells' time that had one, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
But
Uh,
yeah, because you're carving the way too, so you could make all the mistakes. Like if you write a short story now and you make the same mistakes that H.G. Wells was making, try to use those same tropes, people are going to laugh at you. But
exactly. Yeah.
you can use him as leverage to get someplace new, because that's the name of the game, is telling a new story and telling an old story in a new way. Excuse me.
I'm I'm really curious where everything is headed to. I mean, how people are going to publish anything at all in 20 years' time.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? I mean, everybody's going to publish, everybody's going to create art. It is a giant jumble of what are we going to do with all of it. I mean, there are so many people, but I think it's interesting though, because people like you are actually in a position to do more with your art than other people necessarily. Not, you know what I mean? I mean, you have skills,
Well, in as
like
much as
major skills. And I'm
in
not
as
just
much
talking
as
about helicopter piloting. What's that?
in as much as they matter at all, it's
But I mean, what can you do with your coding and your fiction? I mean, can these things meld together to create something that, I mean, have you been playing around with any ideas that would like take both halves of your brain and like mush them together?
Well, I won't be the first. There's a lot of really technical sci-fi floating around, and Andy Weir, The Martian, was rather technical. Maybe it
Yeah,
wasn't.
I mean, that's good stuff, right? I love the technical science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, you can just you feel like you're learning stuff from it, which is
So
good.
what I'm talking about is taking, I mean, you're a programmer, right? I mean,
Yeah,
would you take your programming skills and write something with it with like your science fiction
it
novel
works the other
writing?
way around,
I
Sal.
mean,
I take my writing skills and use them in programming a lot. I wouldn't know how to do it the other way,
that's what I'm
honestly.
asking though. I mean, can you do that though?
Yeah.
Because that's the future, isn't it? I mean, people want to be entertained. Writing is almost done. I mean, what we're doing, writing novels, what it's like going the way of the 8 track or something. People don't want to have an 800-page experience like that normally. A very small percentage of people do. So what's the next wave? What's going to capture people? Video games, right? Or something else?
Whoever can guess that the answer to that question is going to be a billionaire. I don't know, VR. I don't know, VR theater.
VR. I hate it. I hate the idea of something on my face like that. That blocks out the real world. I mean, I worry about assassinations all the time because I'm so freaking important.
That somebody's going to kill you while you have the thing on your face.
Somebody's going to kill me when I have that thing on my face. I mean, why wouldn't you? If you're an assassin, you're coming for me, and I'm like pretending like I'm in the woods with my VR headset on, that'd be the best time, right? So
Would they
no.
really care? I don't know.
I think that ultimately that's my biggest point is that I'm not going to be assassinated for anything whatsoever. Nobody even care.
If enough people don't think like you, if enough people, feel better about having something on their faces, perhaps VR theater might pick up. A situation where you put on the headset and you watch something live, watch a live
Love
performance
it.
of a.
Is there a
Yeah,
lot
you
of
can.
how's the theater in Sweden?
Not as big as they claim to be.
What do you mean?
Big the old world and everything has a reputation to protect, and part of that is the old arts like theater and stuff. But
So
Swedes
interesting.
are sort of becoming more and more modern. I mean, you mentioned getting a check in the mail. You wouldn't
Yeah.
get that in Sweden. Everything happens by internet. So you,
Yes.
you don't even have checks.
Actually, I have a publisher that sends me physical checks. I
All
have to
right.
I have a picture. I have to take a picture of it with my phone to deposit into my checking account.
The only checks I ever get are from Amazon, so they're Americans too.
Oh, really? They send you a check too? They won't
Yeah,
direct deposit. Oh, that's right. They won't because you're from Europe.
yeah, exactly. They can't do it. But in East Europe, theater is sort of big. I mean, where I come from, in
Eastern Europe.
yeah,
Yeah.
they do go to theater a lot, and I many years ago I translated a theater play into Romanian from English, and it enjoyed a rather large success in the capital of Romania, in Bucharest. I mean, it was played on stage for years to come. So people are still enthusiastic about that. Now, whether they would want to blend it with something so radical as VR, who can tell?
Yeah,
But it
no,
does
that's
have some
interesting.
advantages. I mean, you can cheat in VR. You can have something that's looks like it's on the stage, but it's not really there. You can make things fly. You can have all sorts of effects which aren't practical to do on a stage.
What do you think about augmentation? Like taking electronics and implanting them in the human body?
Oh, that I thought you meant. Okay. Well, I
Well, I
mean,
am talking about like an augmented reality, but like internally, like where the you don't actually interfere with anything physically, but you enhance what you can do physically through like cybernetic
like
implants or
biohacking,
something.
what they call biohacking.
Biohacking, yeah, that's exactly what it's called. I mean, it's scary now, right? Because it seems like people are Frankensteining the hell out of themselves. But
I honestly can't think of something I would apply.
I don't think I would do it either. I mean, right? I mean, you won't want something injected into you.
I mean, it's not the injection that I would worry about. I don't see the utility of it. I don't see what I could possibly gain. I mean, see better, okay.
Well, I imagine Google Glass, like the glasses that Google came out with a few years ago that were a
Yeah.
complete failure. I
Uh,
imagine something like that, but instead of you needing something, you have this. I don't know, man. Something that reflects off the lens in your eyeball. maybe, and you have a whole operating system at your disposal within your brain, like running off your own chemistry or something along those lines, and you can
Something
have
that could be
complete
easily hacked,
access to it.
to the internet.
You have to have access to the internet, right? I mean, everything is hooked up somehow physically, but
Yeah,
you play games. I mean, you wouldn't have a thing that you'd have to plug into. You just decide you're playing a game and you'd be kind of wrapped up in this environment. I feel like that's the next stage. I mean, does reading fit into that? Does reading fit into the VR type situation too? I mean, is a normal blow Joe person buy a book when they can go into a virtual reality simulation?
that's a very good question.
I took an NYU course on game writing, video game writing,
Mm.
just like a seminar over a course of like 2 weeks or something like that, and it was incredibly fascinating because you write like in tandem with these people, these programmers, as they're like doing the game. You're not like writing the game first, like a story
Yeah,
that's finished. You're filling in the gaps of these programmers. You're
yeah.
doing the slash
People
scenes or
have to
whatever.
start with what they can do
Yep.
and build on that.
This is the game that we're building. This is a character design that we have. What do we have? And you start filling in the gaps. And you're kind of creating the game as it goes along, but there are boundaries, obviously. It's a video game. You can only go so far with the programming or whatever. It's interesting. I would love to try it. Sounds so fascinating.
It's a big industry in Sweden. I think
Game
electronic.
writing, games, video games, really?
I mean, well, as an industry, as in building, as in making them. EA have offices here, among others, Electronic Arts, and for some reason, the Swedish programmers and creators and the creative directors and writers and stuff appear to be appreciated. I'm not very good with games, to be honest. I'm more of a solitaire person. The last game I've played.
Why do you
uh,
think? Why are they in Sweden? EA is not a Swedish company, right? They're North American.
no, but they outsource like everybody else.
Everybody else, right? It's just
Yeah.
one of those corporate strategies to save money.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Why
it
Sweden
doesn't.
though?
I don't think it saves money because
Right?
Sweden is normally more
Sweden's
expensive.
like elite, and that's where you go to spend more money
Yeah,
in a way.
exactly. So they have to have some creative reasons.
I guess. I mean, EA is top dog. I mean, they put out a lot of big games. I guess. I don't know. I played that football game, Madden, that was in the news recently. A little bit. It's
That
fun.
you played it. What was
What's
it? The
that?
name? What was it?
The Jacksonville, Florida shooting that just happened.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that game. I know it. That's the only EA title I really have ever played. I
Okay.
mean, video games are fun. I mean, what do you do for fun? I mean, what's your thing that you go to when you're not writing, or is writing your thing? Is writing your
Well,
fun?
I used to make games, and I made my first game when I was 16, and that would put it in 1990 something. So
I think I was 16 in 1990 something too, man. You don't have to worry about it.
okay.
I was 16 in 1993, actually.
All right. Well, me too. So yeah,
Okay.
there you go. But I'm more interested in the creative aspect of making it and thinking it out and finding solutions to the problems involved rather than playing it. I remember that I made it and I gave it to my friends, but I didn't. I never finished it myself.
That's interesting. So you're writing the code into like an old computer though too. I tried to do that when I was a kid. I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, and then I got to the end and I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do with it. Were you figuring it out on your own? Did you have a kit? How did you build a game when you were 16 years old in 1993 for no? I mean, we're not talking about modern age where you can go on the internet and say, I need to build a game, and the HTML just kind of does it for you. I mean, this is old school.
No, we didn't have access to the internet as much as there wasn't any internet at all in 1993. We had the beginnings of the World Wide Web then. But we did have computers. We had maybe older computers, but to
Mhm.
today's standards, they were kind of capable, and we did have programming languages and a lot
What
of
did you
spare time.
What did you program in?
Back in those days, I was programming in C and in Pascal.
That's so
I don't
interesting.
know. I'm calling it Pascal as the Americans do, but obviously he was a French guy, so it should be pronounced Pascal.
What do you code in now?
Oh, right now I'm a web developer, so my language of choice is mostly Ruby. Ruby is a Japanese invention made by a Japanese guy in 2005, and it's kind of modern and has a lot of qualities. But you can't be a programmer these days and stick to one language. You have to be polyglot, otherwise you're getting nowhere. So I find myself using 3 or 4 or 5 languages at a time, all the time.
I mean, that's another industry where you can easily get swallowed up and become a dinosaur, huh?
And it's about to happen to me, not only on account of my age. I'm 41 now, but there's so many new people pushing from the back that it's you have to spend 50% of the time, whatever you're doing, learning new stuff, and you can't afford to spend less than that, because if you spend less than that, in 6 months you're going to be out of the market.
So interesting. So you don't solve problems as they occur. You need to know what the problems are in the new language before they even happen.
More than that, you have to use the language that will help you address the problems that you foresee for a given project. You can't
So
afford to just use a language because you know it. I mean,
so interesting.
I'm talking language. I'm talking English to you now because you can't speak Swedish or Romanian.
No, or Romanian. Yeah, I can't speak anything other than like halfway decent English. I'm not even very good with that.
You don't have the luxury. In programming, you have to use whatever tool solves the problem that you have. You can't
With
just.
perfect grammar too. I mean, you cannot make mistakes or it won't work,
Well, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
The computer is unforgiving. So yeah, there are pros and cons with that, just like with everything.
So I mean, what did you say you do for fun then? I mean, that's what you do with your day job. It's stressful. You can't make mistakes. I mean, you come home and then you write, and you can't make mistakes there either. Or is
I'm,
it?
you're gonna laugh, but have you ever heard of ham radio?
Oh, you mentioned this before. Actually, you're a ham radio
Yeah,
operator.
I'm a ham radio operator, I think they're called. Yeah, it's
S-
it's just people, mostly old people, talking to each other over radio, and it's immensely relaxing, especially if we do it in Morse code, like they did it
Oh,
120 years ago when this was
okay.
invented.
How many
And I have a
languages?
little, yeah, I have a 1950 vintage
Wow.
Morse key, which I use to talk to people around the world. And what's ironic is that I use it. I don't have a radio. I use it over the internet.
That's cool too.
Yeah. So I talk to people from, I don't know, Bolivia or Peru or India, using Morse code, using this 1950 vintage gadget, but I do it over the internet. Obviously, I could just give them a phone call on the cell phone, but
I mean, but you're doing it in a way that requires brain activity. I mean, like hardcore brain activity. I mean, I don't know how to do most Morse code. How many languages do you speak? Like actual human languages?
oh, well, depends on.
Obviously, Swedish, Romanian, English.
Yes, I can also do a little German and a little Czech.
That's five. So then you have Morse code. So that's six. That's a whole language all on its own, right?
Or if you want to call it that, it's an
That's
alphabet.
that's the alphabet. I mean, you make words with it. You don't make any other noise besides that. I mean, I guess it's based on English, right? Or do you do it in the language that you want to communicate in?
It's a letter by letter thing, so each letter
Yeah,
has a signal.
but it's the English alphabet, right? It's our
Well,
26 letter.
which can be whichever alphabet, but originally it's the English one, and each letter has a signal made of dots and dashes, and you just mostly write down what you hear. You hear a dot and a dash, and that's the letter A. You hear a dash and 3 dots, and that's the letter B.
Well, how does
And
somebody who's is it work the same way in like acrylic language or something? Like you're writing in Russian Morse code? Is it
I mean,
because
Cyrillic.
I can't
Uh,
understand it, right? If I knew Morse code in English, I don't know Russian Morse code.
no, well, no, obviously. The other thing is that there's very long list of short codes that ham radio operators use, because so that they save time typing. And there's literally like 60 pages of shortcuts, like CQ, meaning calling. Literally, the verb calling is just 2 letters, CQ, and many others. And you have to kind of work your way through that, because even if you understood what somebody's saying and translate the Morse code into Latin letters, into normal letters, you wouldn't necessarily understand the meaning if you didn't have access to this list of this
Oh,
sort.
shortcode.
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of relaxing, and the thing I like most of it is that, well, once you get good enough, you can just listen to Morse code and watch your own hand transcribe it on paper like a printer. It stops being a conscious effort and it becomes an income, a subconscious activity in a way. And you just look at your own hand writing letters on paper, and you don't have to consciously listen to the dots and dashes and convert them. It just happens automatically in some deep part of the brain. I think that's fascinating.
I would get really, really stressed out that I would miss one, and then I would miss one, and then I would miss two, and I
It
would
happens.
drop the ball, and I would not even like.
Yeah. It happens, but you get over it after a time. I started when I was 11 in my home country, and I just did it as a hobby. But now I think it's really relaxing, and I love to decouple again, as the Swedish say, by surfing the waves, literally more or less, and having a brief chat with some bloke in South Africa.
Morse code reminds me of Contact, the book by Carl
Yeah.
Sagan, the movie, Jodie Foster movie.
And also the
God,
Interstellar.
I want it to be science fiction. I want it to be worked into science fiction. I think it's a great element of science fiction, Morse code. I mean, back in the day, it was science fiction, wasn't it? Communicating long distances.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Yeah, and it
look what it's
played such
done,
a part in the war, and it was such a closely guarded secret. But
right? I
well,
mean, look what we're doing right now, too. I mean, what a cousin or ancestor to that, or
uh
predecessor to it. I mean, we talking on Hangouts right now is basically just a really complex form of Morse code.
it is in all aspects of it. It is. The funny thing about Morse code being used in both Interstellar and what was it the other one said?
Oh my
Uh,
God, it wasn't it? It was this bookshelf. He
yeah,
communicated with his daughter via the bookshelf. Okay, spoiler alert, but whatever. That's just a great
yeah,
movie.
it was Matthew McConaughey starring in
Yeah.
both. Uh,
Oh, what Interstellar, and what was the other one?
and what we
Oh,
call it?
Contact. Yeah,
Contact.
Contact. He
Yeah,
was in there too.
that
He
one.
was the priest.
Yeah, him
Yeah,
and
that's
Jodie.
cool.
Yeah. I wonder if he knows Morse code. That's a good question.
I doubt actors know anything. I mean, they're just really good at mimicking, right? If they stopped and tried to learn anything, they'd probably stop making movies. I mean, look at Daniel Day-Lewis. That guy tries to learn how to make shoes forever, and he keeps quitting movies.
On the other hand, do you know Dolph Lundgren?
Yeah,
He, a famous action star. He's Swedish, and he has a PhD in chemistry.
yeah, from MIT, right?
Exactly. So that's nothing to look down your nose at.
I just watched a TED Talk with him just recently. Um, yeah, what was he talking? I can't remember exactly what the TED Talk was about, but he was mentioning how abusive his father was to him growing up.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
you might want to consider inviting him for your next episode.
I have invited I just invited Will Wheaton to be on my podcast
Oh,
and got
really?
completely, yeah, I would love to have Will Wheaton on my podcast. I just
Do you
reach
think-
out. I have no shame. I just reach out and see what they say. I mean,
I'm sure that Will would agree, wouldn't he?
you think so? No, he won't agree. Him and his wife are constantly harassed on the internet, like
Oh,
horribly
really?
so. Oh yeah. Like his wife, I told this story already on the podcast a few weeks ago. His wife went to the New York Book Expo, New York City Book Expo, and I was up there. I got to see her. It was pretty cool. She's kind of famous. I follow her on Twitter, mainly just because she's the wife of Will Wheaton.
Right.
But other people kind of looked down on her for that exact same reason and called her names for trying to sell a children's book with her last name being, a Star Trek actor's last name. She had a really horrible time. A lot of people said horrible things to her, and her Twitter is constantly bombarded with assaulting threats and things like that. I guess, I mean, it doesn't pay to be famous as far as I
Oh,
can.
exactly. Yeah, that's why we should be thankful for what we have.
Right. I mean, you
And
don't want that. You really don't.
no, yeah. Well, it's hard to choose between anonymity and harassment, and we shouldn't have to.
No, you shouldn't have to. I mean, you could reach out to people and try to be successful in your field without having, horrible people try to
Right.
bring you down. And I wonder seriously if it's not just something else happening. You know what I mean? I mean, we have a situation where the industry is being attacked by something new, like the cable pipeline of entertainment nobody wants to go to anymore, and they're going someplace else.
Hmm.
So, I mean, are we kind of being turned off by the internet, by this giant kind of monolith turning its eyes on us, going, no, we don't want you there. We want you over here watching our stuff the way we want you to watch it.
Oh, well, that's an interesting theory.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, the world is changing, right? I mean, do you have cable TV? Do you have a hookup to the wall that you put your TV into and just watch
True, true,
whatever's being streamed to you?
true. Yeah. I don't really. I'm not a. I don't get to watch much TV, but we do have it. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, we cut cords here. I mean, we don't really like it. I don't like the constant streaming of content, right? I mean, I hate that it doesn't stop. If you start watching it, you have to get up and turn the TV off to make it cease. You know,
Yeah.
you can't
Exactly.
you can't like just shut off and let a show wash over you without it just being that one show. You're bound to watch 6 or 7 because they don't ever stop.
True, especially with stuff like Netflix and things that where they encourage just watching.
They
You
just
know.
want you to veg out, right? They want you to sit there forever.
Yeah. Well, I can see the business case in that, but I don't know how the future is going to turn up
Yeah, I
for
don't know.
this.
I mean, nobody knows, right? I mean, we're in new uncharted territory every single day. No clue how the future is going to work out.
Yeah. 50 years from now, we're going to listen to this episode of the podcast and say, ha, 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 how could you not see that
Wow,
coming?
hopefully 91, both of us, old men on canes. There was a really great book. I think it was the 100-year-old man goes for a walk or something. I think it was Norwegian or Swedish. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was real famous. They made a movie out of it.
Yeah, I certainly know it. It's Swedish, yeah. I've read it,
It's
and it's a beautiful book.
that'll be us, man. We'll be 91 years old. We'll just go for a walk.
He was 100, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm
Um,
I'm just saying, 91. I'm happy with 91. If I lived to 100, man, I'd be happy.
all you have to do is avoid all the VR headset, and then you'll live to be.
And VR headsets and sugar,
Yes.
right?
Nobody's gonna kill you.
VR headsets and sugar and no political offices.
Yeah, I don't know about sugar.
You know what's really interesting to me about Sweden is how scared you guys are of Russia. Not scared in terms of like, oh, I'm afraid you're going to beat us up, but you're afraid that they're going to attack you
Oh
like
yes,
any second.
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. We've been sent brochures at home. What was it, like 2 months ago? About how to prepare ourselves in case there's a war with Russia,
My
and they
God,
were,
man.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, they are serious. I know of it as a serious thing.
Yeah,
There's always like these things. There's always these reports of Russian submarines showing up in Swedish waters, and it's like a big
right.
deal.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Uh, you can't. There are some people you cannot uh, guess. You can't just predict what they're going to do. And two of those people are Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump.
Yeah,
It's
well, we know that Donald Trump has unfortunately checks and balance. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I would love to say that he's like powerless, but he can screw things up. He already has. I mean, all trade on this planet is like in havoc right now because he's our president.
it's hard to judge. There are so many. He has so many supporters who insist that the economy is doing so much better.
I don't
I mean,
understand. I really don't. I don't understand how his approval rating is 50% or 40% or whatever the flip it is. It's really high. It's
he's gonna
higher than
get.
I think it should be. It shouldn't be that high. It should be really damn low.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, I don't like John McCain. You know, I didn't like the guy. I didn't vote for him when he ran against Barack Obama, but I didn't want to spit on his coffin like Trump did. I mean, that was the most despicable thing I've ever seen in my life, besides stealing children from their mother or
and that
being an
happens to a lot of people.
orange-haired buffoon. I mean, this guy is like everything. Time I turn around, he's offensive as fuck, and he's our president. It's
And
disgusting.
there's a lot of your supporters waiting to do the same thing.
His supporters can't wait to vote him in office for a second time. I don't understand what's happening.
I don't think there's anything he could do wrong enough to detract his supporters. I don't honestly.
No, because he calls it fake news. I mean, he has already an avenue to say they don't know what they're talking about. It's just politics. And
Yeah,
it might be. That's a thing, right? I mean, I'm in an echo chamber. You're in an echo chamber. We don't know exactly what's outside of it. We don't hear that stuff. And when we do, it sounds awful and discordant. So we don't want to listen to it. I mean, I have a really hard time paying attention to what Donald Trump is saying because it doesn't make any sense. I don't know I don't know what clean coal is. You know what I mean? That just sounds like nonsense to me. I wish I could translate that into some kind of meaningful thing to me where I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, clean coal. I
yeah,
totally
it's
know what he's talking
kind of pretty
about.
long. Yeah.
Wouldn't it make you feel better, right, if it was a real thing and not some fake bullshit that he said in front of a national television audience?
Yeah, but it doesn't
Clean
matter.
coal.
I mean, it only matters to the people who don't vote for him.
Yeah,
Everybody else
West
votes.
Virginia. The people that mattered most heard clean coal and said, hell yeah, here's my vote, here's my money, keep being my president. And I hope it doesn't work out, but
Well, it will.
He's got a noose around our neck. Who's your Donald Trump? Like in Sweden or Romania? Do you have Donald Trumps in either country?
We 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 have one in Sweden. There's a political party in Sweden, and we have elections right in 5 days actually. We have general elections here in Sweden, and we're going to vote for the new top people, not for the king obviously,
Uh,
but everybody down there, down from the king. And there's this political party which is called the Swedish Democrats, and they started as neo-Nazis, and then they had to soften it up a bit. And the main line,
you
the
don't
main,
soften shit like that up, unfortunately. I think it
it's
always remains there.
yeah, except they kind of resonate with a lot of people because they would like to address the immigration problem, which is mostly the refugee problem,
Yeah.
into they think they have the solution on how to fix that, which is mostly closing the borders, like Trump is envisaging.
Closing the borders. So I mean, obviously, I don't know. I know you're Romanian. I really, your personal life is your personal life. But I mean, as far as being an immigrant to Sweden, this has to affect you emotionally on some level, right? Does it freak you out? They're saying, I want to close the border and
Mm.
targeting immigrants.
The thing is that there's a big difference here between European immigrants, which I am. I come from the European Union, which is basically one big state that both Sweden and Romania are members. So I'm allowed to travel anywhere in the EU and settle anywhere I want.
Okay.
I don't need anyone's approval. So there's a big difference between us on the one hand and refugees on the other hand, who are people who travel, end up from Syria and end up all the way in Sweden.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, they're
just
full-on refugees too. I mean, they got no place to go, and there are no
yeah,
answers unless we
they
want to watch
travel
them
a
die.
lot.
And we don't do it. We're not taking any of them in right now. It's like
Uh,
Germany has like millions of refugees
yeah.
at the moment, and yeah, it's a big crisis over there.
I think we have the most in Europe, Sweden.
Oh,
But
really?
then, yeah, but the Germany, France, and the UK, they're more visible
And it's
because,
scary too because shit does happen, and it can get linked back to the Syrian refugees, doesn't it?
well, yeah, I mean, there's also this problem with the perceived increased number of rapes in Sweden. And the reason for that is that in Sweden, it counts for a rape if you just report it. It doesn't have to be proven. In the statistics, it's going to count as a plus one. Whereas in other countries, it has to be proven in order to be counted in the stats. So that's why our stats are a lot higher than in the rest of Europe. So people just assume that, wow, we're letting the refugees in and they're raping left and right, which is
Hmm.
false. On
I
the
mean,
other hand,
ultimately, I mean, we have a situation where humans are hurting, right? I mean, we have a situation in this country too where humans are hurting and they're fleeing their country to come here to work really bad jobs. I can imagine that would be what they want with their lives, but they have to do it because where they're coming from is so horrible.
hmm,
I mean, at the end of the day, whether they're here or not, we have a human problem on this planet, right? And we need to address it. We can't shut borders down. I've written
yeah,
fiction about shutting borders down. I mean, it doesn't work. It just makes things worse. It creates a stink and a fugue outside your gate. I mean, you have to deal with it. It's going to be
no, it
part of.
doesn't. Yeah. But the thing is, politically, it might be the ticket because a lot of
To get
people
them
are.
elected, right? Because people are
Exactly.
freaked out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the Donald Trump party is leading right now in the polls.
Well, not as far as I'm aware, but all the
Okay,
other
good.
parties are operating under the assumption that they're gonna have to ally themselves with these guys and somehow make a deal.
Oh, interesting. So because they are going to be a part of your national government then.
Apparently, yeah, because they have really a lot of supporters, and many of them are intelligent people with very good arguments.
And you really can't ignore what people are saying, right? I mean, you just vote on it. You give them an opportunity to speak, and if it's unfortunately enough people believe what they're saying, then they end up being the ones that are right for a little while.
That's democracy.
That's democracy. That's the way it works. And I mean, I hope to God. I mean, it looks like we have elections too coming up in November.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, we'll know your results here in 5 days, and that'll be interesting to see. But our results in November will say a lot if the left can get majority in our Congress. I mean, it'll mean a lot, but I mean, it's just our political system is really bad. We've got districts where Republicans can't get voted out of, and they've made it impossible.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
don't think they have a. I don't think the left has a chance in the U.S. right now. But I'm not in the U.S., so and I don't get a vote.
No,
uh,
I mean, what did somebody said on Reddit? Somebody made a comment about this being the death of an empire, and I think empire building should die in the past, and there's no place for it in the world. I don't think we should say we own this place, we own that those people. We need to control how they feel or this, that, and the other thing. It's very unfortunate, right? I mean, in terms of being very conservative and trying to control the way people live their lives.
well, that's
That can
politics
be
on the hand.
yeah, that's what politics is, isn't it? It's about control.
Didn't wasn't Churchill who said that democracy is the worst imaginable political system, with the exception of all the others?
Yeah, I think that was Churchill actually. It's a beautiful quote. Yeah,
Yeah.
democracy is the worst possible choice for government or something along those lines, except for all the other
Exactly.
ones. I mean, humans, right? I mean, the ultimate government was when we were picking our own vegetables and killing our animals whenever we needed it, because then hunger dictated what you did. If you made the wrong choice, you died. If you made the right
Right.
choice, you got something to eat. And then
Yeah.
we started growing wheat, right? And the fertile ground became really, really important, and water became really important. And then, man, wheat destroyed all freedoms. From that point on, we had to regulate and control. It's interesting.
It's gonna get. It's probably gonna get, as you say in America, it's gonna get a lot worse before it gets any better.
I think, I mean, some people make the comparison, right, that this is probably the most peaceful it has ever been on the planet.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you can say that.
In terms of communication, I had no clue about Egypt when I was a kid. You know, Romania. What was Romania? Transylvania, right? I mean, there was a very, very pretty gymnast in 1976. I know she was Romanian.
Alia Comuneci, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I had a big crush on her, even though she was like 50 when I was a kid. But I mean, and now I get to talk to a dude that grew up there. I mean, we can have a whole podcast about communism, and you'd be able to provide me with insights of what that was like growing up. I mean, it's really badass that we're able to do this, and hopefully
Yeah,
this
you could say
changes the
that
world.
it's as good as it gets.
It's as good as it gets, but it's going to get better in terms of this if we don't mess it up. I mean, that's what I'm scared about, because that 40% in the middle of my country want to mess it up. They want to make it that we don't talk. They want to make it that it's impossible for me to have this conversation with you and record it and put it on the internet for other people to enjoy.
Well, then, Brian, you're always welcome to move to Sweden.
Hey, man, I would do it in a heartbeat. I think your guys' weed laws are horrible, though, and I don't like that.
The what?
I don't think your guys' weed laws are very liberal, and America's starting to get cool on that subject.
Well, you can always try.
Yeah, you can always try. Yeah, I've heard amazing things about Sweden. I definitely would love to go there. My wife wants to see the Northern Lights really badly.
Oh yeah, mine too.
Oh, you know, that hasn't been satisfied, so we shouldn't come to Sweden then. Iceland is the place.
Yeah, well, or northern Sweden, because Sweden goes pretty far up north, and it's really possible to see the northern lights from there. Or Finland. Iceland is fine if you like to drink.
Yeah, I'm not a
And
big drinker.
no, me neither. So there's not much else to do in Iceland. Only you can, see the volcanoes and drive around the island, which is going to take a day or two.
A day or two.
That's mostly
Check it
it.
out. I mean, it's like I've never been. It's one of those places to check off. And I mean, speaking of things that you have not done yet, what's your plans going forward? You're editing right now. When is that novel going to be up and released?
Well, I'm hoping for a few weeks.
A few
Uh,
weeks.
yeah, I've taken up another thing, which is I don't know if you've heard of Udemy. Udemy is a website where
Oh yeah, it's an education website, right?
yeah, exactly.
Online. Yeah.
And I'm a trainer there. I develop educational content for it. I'm selling a couple of courses there, and I'm working on another one now. And this one is like 3 times as big as the other two. So there's a lot of work involved. This is a programming course that
Oh,
I'm
that's
doing.
fantastic. Are you getting satisfaction out of that, or thinking
Uh,
about crossing over
well, if
completely?
you're talking about money, it's a lot more. It's a lot better pay than writing books. So
But
you
I
might
mean,
write your.
yeah, I mean, but you get to teach people though too, which is interesting. That's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're
So I'm
modeling
selling a
yourself.
few courses there, and I'm working on a couple more. So that's a nice source of revenue in which you work relatively hard to develop something for a month or two, and then you just look at your bank account.
and watch it rise with people that are interested in going into the same field that you are.
Hopefully, yeah.
And that's fascinating. So you're going to get the ND out. You're working on courses. Send me links to the course and anything else that you want people to be aware of. I'll make sure
Okay.
to put that in the notes so people can get in that
I actually
direction.
have one Morse code, and I think it's on sale right now. It's called Learn Morse Code with Stories, which has like, well, I don't know, 6 chapters, and I tell a story at the end of each chapter, and it's a story related to Morse code.
Oh, that's cool. Oh my God, that's such a fantastic idea. And I'm thinking to myself, I have a kid. I have 2 kids, a girl and a boy, 3 years old. I'm like, I'm going to get that book for my boy. Right? I mean, eventually one day he might be interested in something like that. When I was a kid, I was definitely interested. I never had a book like that though.
It's
That's
a video course, so everything happens online,
oh,
and
do it on the internet. Excellent.
yeah, so they have to, just watch it and maybe take a little notebook.
We're working on an hour. I think we're just about there because I think we started a little bit earlier because
Right.
you were generous with me. So I won't keep you much longer, but I do have a couple questions for you just to sum it up.
Okay.
You know, when you work on this stuff, I mean, what's the most important thing to you?
When I write a book, the most important thing to always is what the reader will think reading it. Will the reader like it? Will the reader think, "Hey, this is cool. I'm gonna read another page just because I like it."
Does that haunt you while you write?
That's the one and only thing that I think about.
Does it haunt you though while you write? I mean, does it haunt you or does it make you smile and you look forward to
Well,
the result?
I honestly don't know. I mean, what's the difference?
I mean, as far as like how I write, I'm writing with like that dude behind me. You know, that big jerk in class that always had the smart ass comment that sneered whenever your story was being read. You know, I'm writing to those 2 dudes sitting in front row of my reading who didn't pay attention to a word I'm saying. You know,
Okay.
I'm writing for the worst criticism in the world. I'm
Yeah.
writing looking at what they're saying, possibly under their breath to each other. You know, I'm
Sure.
looking for that stuff as I write. But you're looking at readers though. You're looking at the good people, the people that are looking forward to your stories.
I suppose so. I mean, I never call myself an optimist, but
Yeah, I guess I outed myself as a pessimist, huh?
but yeah, I do. Well, it's the opinion of the reader that's foremost, of foremost importance. And
That's the mystery.
I read back what I read, and if it doesn't seem interesting enough or captivating enough, I'm just gonna delete it and try again.
It's so impossible though. How do you know that as the author? You don't know that, right? I mean, it's invisible for you. It has to be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just read a lot and hope for the best. Hope
I
that you
mean,
experience nothing.
as far as I mean, what is, what matters most to you? I
Yeah.
mean, is it the opinion? I mean,
I,
is it
I,
the
I,
story?
I guess so. Yeah, I'm not writing for myself, so at the end of the day, you could say that it's the reader's opinion that
And
weighs most.
um, yeah. I mean, that's a new question. I'm kind of trying to throw in. I can't even remember which one I asked you. Did I ask you what's the most difficult thing for you? Did I ask you? And the other one's what matters most.
Yeah, that one
So
you
did I
did.
ask you both those? Because now I confused myself. I have like, I'm slightly dyslexic, so it's like, oh crap, which one did I start with? All right, my last question before we find out where you're at on the World Wide Web is, what are you reading right now? What are you consuming that you think people should know about?
Reading.
Yeah, like television, video games, anything like that that you would like people to be aware of?
I already mentioned this trilogy written by Scott Lynch, which is called, well, the first one is called The Lies of Locke Lamora, and this is a fantasy novel. And I don't usually like fantasy. Sci-fi is something else, but fantasy with no sci in front of it isn't usually something I'm drawn to. But this is so well written. It's so appealing in terms of language. In terms of, it's just like candy.
Oh,
It's like
that's what they call it.
it's really, it's amazing to read. This is a guy who knows what he can do, what he can't do, and he just stays on the good side of all the tropes. And it's just so pleasantly surprising that he doesn't make any mistakes. And you mentioned how H.G. Wells, made a few good stuff and then made a lot of crap. That's because he didn't care. He mostly cared about himself and writing and maybe making money. I don't know what he
Oh yeah,
cared
he was
about.
probably drunk. most of the
Yeah,
latter part of his
maybe,
life.
yeah. But this guy, this Scottish guy, who's by the way about our age, he's so careful that he's gonna produce quality stuff consistently, page after page after page. That is amazing. I don't know how he finds where he finds all this energy just to, just to never give up and just to always produce quality and always come up with good stuff.
Well, man,
And
did you read his indie stuff before he went traditional?
sadly, no.
No.
I was in a train someday and I saw a lady reading it on the seat opposite me, and I was, she seemed really into it. I was really curious and looked it up and bought it, and that was that's, that's how. And it's a series called The Gentleman Bastard, or Bastard as you say in America, The Gentleman Bastard. It's called a series, and the first book is The Vice of Lord Mora. There's two more, and it's I would recommend it to anybody, regardless if they like fiction, if they like fantasy or not, which I don't. It's just something else. It's a
That's
lot
very
better.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at regular fantasy, like what's the book that the Martin book?
Oh yeah, what do you call it? Song of Fire and Ice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
classical fantasy, and it has
epic.
millions,
Yeah,
millions of fans. And I think this is better.
yeah. I love when you find something like that you just
Yeah,
soak
yeah, yeah.
into, or
Makes
stuck
you good.
into. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Where can we find you on the World Wide Web? Where do you want people to go
Well,
to interact with you and find your novels and whatnot?
I have a website which only has 4 letters, and those 4 letters are ALXX, and the suffix is SE from Sweden, alxx.se.
I'm wondering how many people go there and wonder if it's like an adult site. It's almost that perfect. Like if you're slightly drunk, you're going to type in those combination of letters and get
Yet another X, and
and you're done. Well, man, I really really appreciated you coming on again and having this conversation with me.
I'm
I'd love
really
to have you back
grateful.
on a third time.
I'm grateful for you inviting me a second time, and I hope to chat with you soon again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do another Mirage and do a subject matter because
Okay.
definitely you can go all over the place. So it's very incredibly fun.
Yeah, yeah, you too. I mean, I don't often get a chance to discuss things like American politics with anybody, to be honest.
And don't worry about opening the door. I mean, I'd love to hear your opinions, especially from where you're from. I mean that it's got to be incredibly interesting coming from a situation where I don't know, Romania. Were you scared as a kid? Right? People disappeared.
Yeah, they did, often right
Yeah,
off the street. Yeah, I grew up in times where it was really dangerous to say the wrong thing. I mean,
yeah.
really dangerous, seriously dangerous.
I mean,
And
you're a dude that I want to talk to you about this because it's happening, and you saw tyranny. You saw the bad people. People
yeah,
who, I mean, I don't know who Gorbachev was. I mean, that was your leader at one point, right?
that
He
was
ended
the
up
Soviet
communist.
Union. The Soviet Union that the Socialist Republic of Romania wasn't a part of, but we had our
Oh,
own.
really? Okay, interesting. I always thought Romania was part of the USSR.
Well, not by name, not nominally, but it was really, it was deeply within the Soviet sphere of influence. I mean,
Because I mean,
we had.
honestly, politics. Because I mentioned it earlier, politics comes into play when you write about the future. You have to write about government. You write about dystopias. You have to write about what fell apart. I mean, it's
You
very,
do,
very
yeah.
important. I would love to have a whole conversation with you about just politics and
Oh,
fiction.
yeah. And there's politics and sci-fi. It's a category of its own. And there's communist sci-fi. There's sci-fi that came out of socialist and communist countries, which is good.